They helped Nazis escape justice and may have hidden it for decades. Adam Schiff just put Credit Suisse on the spot, and the silence was deafening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for holding this hearing. I just want to follow up on Senator Kennedy's line of questioning. Mr. Karofsky, the information about these rat lines that has come out subsequent to the settlement, was that known to Credit Suisse at the time of the settlement?
We believe that Mr. Borofsky's findings are great findings. He did great work, and for us it was new information through the investigation, and we're grateful for the work. We believe in the 90s it was known about rat lines, Senator, but the fact that the AIO established an office in a Credit Suisse branch in Bern, that AIO members had accounts at Credit Suisse, and I believe Mr. Borofsky also identified, including but also outside of the Bern branch rat lines, 51 in total names of individuals tied to rat lines that also had accounts at Credit Suisse.
So, Mr. Karofsky, it's your testimony that at the time of the 1999 settlement, that folks at Credit Suisse were unaware that they had participated in helping to finance these rat lines?
So I can't, speak to what was known at the time when the settlement, Senator, was being negotiated, which was why the component of the settlement were legal claims that were accounted for and compensated, which is the first part. At the second part, which was the majority, is for unknown claims that the banks agreed to pay for this moral accountability, understanding that the nature of the settlement encouraged us to continue to look, explore, and investigate.
So, but that presumes that this was an unknown claim at the time of the settlement. If Credit Suisse was aware of this, didn't disclose it, is it your position that the settlement would still cover that? Or would that, given that the party sitting across the table wasn't aware of this, would that be outside the scope of that agreement?
No, so we would understand this to be as part of the unknown, since it was new information that we learned.
But that's presuming that it was unknown, right? Mr. Borofsky, have you identified any indication that these accounts were known to people at Credit Suisse at the time of the settlement? That is, that they had facilitated the rat lines?
Regarding the rat lines, no, we've not seen evidence that this was known at the time of the settlement.
And is it your view, Mr. Borofsky, that if this or other claims were known to Credit Suisse at the time, that it would be outside the scope of the settlement?
Senator, the settlement is really outside the scope of my engagement. I haven't really done an analysis of that.
And can you or Rabbi Cooper share with us who are some of the beneficiaries of the rat line? That is, who are some of the more high-profile beneficiaries of the Credit Suisse financing of these rat lines to get people out of Germany?
Part of that is partly a work in progress. We identify in my written testimony a handful of the Nazis who we've confirmed were directly assisted by members of the rat line, but that work is ongoing. This was, many Nazis went to Argentina. The estimates are hundreds of war criminals made their way from Germany into Argentina. One of the things that we're still working on is, were all of them participants of the AIO rat line, or was it a subset of them? That's part of what we're working on. But some of the bold-faced names who've not yet directly tied, people like Adolf Eichmann, people like Dr. Mengele. I mean, they did transport from Germany into Italy, and on to Argentina, but we haven't confirmed their participation in this rat line quite yet.
And Rabbi Cooper, why Argentina? Why did Argentina become this mecca for fleeing Nazis?
Well, there was a strong German community in Argentina even before World War II. And, of course, you had Juan Perón, who ideologically was very comfortable with what the Third Reich was involved with, and also, I think, economically benefited from that relationship. But, Senator Schiff, I really want to thank you for raising the question, because, especially for younger generations, you hear the term rat line. I think it's important And we don't have, for sure, a direct connection on specific individuals that we've been able to learn yet. But we're talking about the architect of the Holocaust, Adolf Eichmann. We're talking about Dr. Joseph Mengele, the angel of death of Auschwitz, responsible for the death of 400,000, for the murder, 400,000 people, including medical experiments. We're talking about Walter Rauff, who was the person who invented the portable gas chambers. We're talking about the commandant of Treblinka, where 800,000 men, women, and children, Jewish children in Poland, were gassed to death. So the big names and the smaller names. And I can just also add, and I know if he was alive today, he would be so grateful to the chairman and everyone here for this hearing. These individuals would escape justice. Mr. Wiesenthal was up against an incredible series of red lines that made it so difficult. He was after Eichmann, they got Eichmann. Mengele avoided the bar of justice until the day he died. Ralph and others, when they were finally exposed, suddenly got sick and passed away in South America. So Argentina, politically speaking, ideologically speaking, in terms of the person running that country with an iron fist, was the perfect place. It was also a large country, and some of them left Argentina for Paraguay and other places in South America at a time when the world was ready to move on from World War II, and were involved in other issues. A few people like Simon Wiesenthal had the courage to pursue it. And the reason it was so difficult, you have to lay some of that blame right at the Credit Suisse officials who facilitated the financing of these activities in the immediate months and years after World War II.
Sure, may I ask one last question? Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for holding this hearing, and thank you, Ranking Member Durbin. I just want to drill down a little bit further on the settlement and the connotations of that. Is this an issue about whether there should be further disclosure of other Credit Suisse activity, complicity, not just in the rat lines, but in any of these transactions with Nazis? Is this an issue of disclosure, or is this an issue of compensation? That is, you could take the position that the settlement caps the compensation, or you could take the position that we're not going to make any further disclosure because it would risk compensation. So I'm trying to get a sense of what's at issue here. I would imagine that, and this is sort of along the lines of what Senator Kennedy said, it would be advantageous to make the disclosure and not fight the disclosure. And if you take a position that any subsequent claim made on the basis of those disclosures is somehow barred, that seems to me a different issue for a different day. But I welcome you to share any other thought.
Thank you very much, Senator. I think it's very important to understand the settlement agreement. The settlement agreement in 1999 was an agreement to provide final closure. The parties were well aware that not all the information at the time was on the table. Berger was still, the commission at the time was still looking for information, in fact completed only in 2002, so it was clear that was anticipated that new information would have come to light. And I think that you get exactly to the right point. The parties at the point agreed to pay a certain amount that was based on specific legal claims, but there was, the majority of it was to cover the unknown. Everything that would have come to light in the future. So today, the point is exactly that one. The settlement agreement does not preclude the banks or any other institution to continue to look for the truth, continue to look into the past and bring to light the new information. And this is what this committee is about, and this is where UBS is committed, and that's why we have engaged also Mr. Barowski, and we wanted to get this right. It's so important that the information comes to light for how bad it can be. It's exactly the purpose, but cannot be that for every piece of information that comes to light, we get under the threat of litigate because this is new information. Where is the incentive then for any financial institution or any other institution to look into the past and bring this information to light?
Well, I think there's a great public policy interest and interest in the bank in making a full historic disclosure. So absolutely. That to me has its own validity, quite separate and apart from any liability that attaches to it. I would just encourage to let Mr. Borowski continue to do his work, give him access to everything that's relevant, If there's a subsequent claim by anyone on the basis of what's discovered, then you deal with it at that time. But I think making the historic record as complete as possible is a virtue in its own right. And I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
For coming, Senator Cruz. I believe that he's the last person. In the meantime,
What you just watched is one of the most chilling congressional exchanges in years. Adam Schiff wasn't grandstanding. He was methodically dismantling the story Credit Suisse has told the world since its 1999 settlement over Nazi-linked accounts. The question was simple and devastating. Did the bank know it was helping finance Nazi rat lines, the underground escape networks that allowed some of history's worst war criminals to flee Europe and evade justice? And what followed was a masterclass in exposure through precision. Schiff pressed again and again on a single moral fault line. If these activities were known at the time of the settlement and not disclosed, then the entire premise of closure collapses. The bank's representatives leaned heavily on the phrase unknown at the time, but that answer only raises a more disturbing possibility, that institutional ignorance became a shield against accountability. The testimony dragged the past into the present in the most unsettling way. We're not talking about abstractions. We're talking about figures like Adolf Eichmann, one of the architects of the Holocaust, and Josef Mengele, the so-called angel of death of Auschwitz. Men responsible for mass murder, medical torture, and genocide. Men who slipped away through networks that required money, logistics, and banking cooperation. And according to investigators, many of those escape routes led to Argentina, a haven made possible by ideology, indifference, and international complicity. What makes Schiff's line of questioning so powerful is that it refuses to let this be buried as ancient history. He made it clear, historic disclosure is not optional, and moral accountability doesn't expire. Settlements don't erase truth. Silence doesn't absolve guilt, and the fear of litigation can never outweigh the obligation to fully expose how financial institutions enabled crimes against humanity. This is what real oversight looks like, cutting through legal fog to confront ethical rot. The truth matters not just for the victims and their families, but for future generations who deserve an unvarnished historical record. If powerful banks can hide behind settlements while profiting from atrocity, then justice is conditional, and that should terrify all of us.